remember in the year 2000, foreign affairs coverage in the media had gone down 600%. And that was in the year 2000, 20 years ago now. I've been really looking for a statistic that could say how much foreign affairs coverage has gone down since then. And I can't find it anywhere. I don't know if it's just not being measured, but it's a lot more. And Americans really don't know what's going on. They don't think about how our decisions are impacting the rest of the world. Some people do, but in large part, we're not seeing it in the media. It's, 100% presidential election and coronavirus all the time, but that's been going on for 4 years as well, and has slowly diminished since then. What really bothers me is that people don't really know what's going on in our own country, and how, as you spoke to, the poverty that's unbelievable and the disparities here that's skyrocketing right now. And the problem that somebody can work full time in this country and not feed their family at the end of the day. Most people who are getting government assistance, if they can get it, because it's cut increasingly more and more, are working full time. And nearly all of them have been working in the recent past full time if they're not working full time. Right now, 54 million Americans don't have enough food to make it to the end of the month. Some people have to rely entirely on what's being donated. Unemployment is very high, and 1 in 4 kids are at risk of going to bed hungry every night in this supposed wealthiest nation in history. We like to brag about how rich we are, but for who are we rich? So I want to speak to the white evangelical vote in the United States, and I have 3 quick things I want to say about it. To piggyback on what Jack and T. Homer were just talking about, is abortion. A lot of people say that that's why they vote Republican. Abortion is an economic issue. It really has a lot to do with what I was just talking about poverty in America. 75% of all abortions are related to poverty. And if somebody, in my mind, was really pro-life, they care about the baby after it's born as well. And it seems like a simple argument, but somehow, this is not how people are thinking about it. If you were really pro-life, you would find that data shows that if you cut poverty in half, it reduces abortion by 30%. Data also shows that if you provide adoption assistance, reduce healthcare costs, fund domestic violence programs, fund programs to reduce unwanted pregnancies, and reduce childcare costs, which are unattainable and unaffordable for many women in the United States, especially single mothers, that further cuts abortion by 50%. So that's 80% right off the bat, right there. So why aren't evangelicals talking about that, about how we can really do something about this problem rather than be an exercise in judgment and the like? I have a few things that I think are Christian policies that people should consider when they vote. Support a living wage, support policies that make families stronger, if that's something that people care about, such as paid family leave, a carefully vetted and fair approach to welcoming immigrants, reforming America's unjust and racially biased criminal justice system that people are not unaware of internationally. We need to take on the threat that's posed by climate change seriously. That's something that affects every life on Earth. We need a plan to fight poverty in this country. And we need affordable health care. 45,000 people die every year due to lack of health insurance. And that statistic is before coronavirus. I don't know what it is right now. Another reason that people talk about voting for conservatives is they want Supreme Court judges that will overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, they got it. It's 6-3 now with conservative justices. So it would seem that that may not be a reason to continue to support presidents on this issue. We'll see if they actually turn over Roe v. Wade, but I seriously doubt it. What was lost in that debate is that the Supreme Court also addresses in upcoming years environmental devastation, economic development that accounts for this widening wealth and poverty gap, the collapse of the possibility of affordable health care, and how we fund political campaigns. So, for example, Does the government represent money, or do we represent the working class in America? If people are serious about caring about children from birth onwards, then they need to consider comprehensive solutions that address actual needs rather than this current deceptive merry-go-round that we're on. It's a travesty in the richest nation in history that women have to make a desperate choice out of fear of not being able to provide for their child, fear of losing their job, or not having proper health care for that child is unbelievable to me. And where is the evangelical voice on that? You know, if we put half of the political capital that we have in the abortion issue as white evangelicals, we could make a huge difference on this issue. Second, I wrote my dissertation on how evangelicals respond to poverty. And unfortunately, evangelicals are 3 times as likely to blame the poor for their poverty than non-Christians. And that's very much tied to ethnocentrism and racism and authoritarianism and the type of bootstrap individualism that Americans are famous for, which is really an egocentric individualism. However, I think it's important to point out this authoritarianism that is very closely tied to nationalism is growing globally, probably in response to globalism in the last several years. We're not the only country suffering from this nationalism, but we are certainly have widespread effects from our nationalism. The reality is that the majority of Americans are living hand to mouth. The majority. They are unhealthy with unaffordable health care and often in the position to make desperate choices, and that's being fueled by the white evangelical vote. So something is wrong with this picture. You know, we need to rethink how our Christianity is being done here entirely. Additionally, you know, we're supposed to be the group that cares about family values. So if we're basing our voting decisions on sexual ethics and family values, I really find it hard to understand the choice of President Trump. He's in the upper teens now of sexual assault cases, best friends with a convicted pedophile. It doesn't really make sense. Lastly, we really have to start sticking to the facts instead of rhetoric. If our public choices were really emphasizing biblical values while also respecting pluralism, there's no question we'd see abortion rates go down significantly. They've historically gone down under the last 2 Democratic presidents. And then we could also see an overall improvement in quality of life for US citizens and start being the international neighbor that we really should be and are not being right now. While we're talking about facts, another thing that often comes up is economics among evangelicals. And what's not said a lot is that the last time we really had a balanced budget is when we had a Democrat House, Senate, and president. Under Trump, our national debt has gone up by 1/3. We've added $7 trillion to it. And we have a real problem with facts and data. US Christians and having less ability to want to accept facts and data is also a part of authoritarianism, which is also closely tied to the fascism that Camilla was talking about. Christians, white Christians in the US are less likely to have the facts about what's occurring and statistically prefer to create some kind of a fantasy world to process this existential anxiety we're having in a rapidly changing world that, you know, many are reacting to with the nationalism. I would love to see the global church, which is outpacing the white evangelical church, which by numbers is going down significantly, really rise up and become the leaders, and minority churches in America become the leaders in what it really means to show the true love of Christ and what it really means in our public lives to bring those sacred held private values such as fighting hunger, fighting poverty, fighting against wage theft, and that's what it is, to the public conversation. Another example of putting out false data and kind of being attracted to the false data. Conspiracy theory that Christians have a tendency to is that coronavirus is a plot by the deep state to take away people's rights. Who knew that this whole pandemic and actually wearing face masks would be a litmus test for somebody's character? In America, it is, in particular Christians. So all that's happened since 2016 has really shown the fruits of what's down deep in the roots of this type of Christianity. And I just believe that we have to not give into fear, and people have pandered specifically to Christians as a strategy. Jack, you're absolutely right. This was a strategy to target abortion, and it was a secular strategy. It wasn't a Christian strategy. The secular strategy in 1980s was to gain the evangelical vote, which previously had been for Democrats, through abortion, which, as you mentioned, the Southern Baptist Church was not against at the time. In Proverbs chapter 6, it talks about 7 things that God finds detestable: a lying tongue, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs conflict in their community are things that God finds detestable. So people who believe in scripture and say that the truth will set you free need to be seeking for that truth and promoting the truth and embracing the truth. Christians should absolutely ask questions, but be careful from whom you seek answers. And we need to check our motives. I need to check my motives. You know, I need to dig into the data when I find something that motivates me and stirs me up. Christians shouldn't be the ones hating and judging and showing our arrogance with nationalism, judging the less fortunate and immigrant, particularly children in cages. Instead, we need to be on the forefront of advocating for the most vulnerable. Babies already born in the US, I would say, are the most vulnerable. And at the very least, if you're pro-life, you have to be pro-child after birth. Those are some of my thoughts on this issue, and I really appreciate being asked to speak and having this conversation with everybody.